Back at it here on the Kaufman Corner podcast, the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. My name is Soren Petro as we talk some Royals baseball with you. I'm going to get into another grade. Last week, we graded J.J. Picollo. This week, we're grading Matt Quatraro. What do we hand out for him? We'll talk about the manager this week. Bobby Witt's contract. What would it look like if the Royals actually are able to extend him? Can we look to some other contracts to give us a guide as to where the Royals might be trying to work a deal with Bobby Witt Jr.? We talk about it next right here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to Kaufman Corner, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here's your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. Time to get to it. What kind of grades are we going to give for Matt Quatraro? We know it was a softball fest with Jazayerli last week as he just lobbed out the big grades there. You were the high grader last week. You gave J.J. Picollo a B. I'm the only one apparently that is willing to give do the tough work around here.
Rany Jazayerli, softy on the Royals front office. That's been my reputation for decades now. So,
apologist for Royals front office. That's Rany Jazayerli. Yeah, not so much. All right. Again, we can only grade Matt Quatraro on this year, right? Like all the problems, that were a part of, what he inherited, are not open for discussion. Just what he did this year, and can we admit that it's pretty hard to grade him? I mean, can we start with that?
Yes, I was debating. Do I give him an incomplete? I just,
What kind of a gunfighter is he? I don't know. He never held anything but a knife. I don't know what his gunfighting skills are because he never got to hold one, right? Like that was a part of as I was looking through different things to try to see what I liked, didn't like, where there's progress, wasn't progress. I'm like, where do you even begin? I mean, I think it's a relevant exercise because it does speak to how hard it is. Like, okay, first of all, how do you grade a manager? Right? Has he lost the clubhouse? No. I think he still commands the clubhouse. Mm-hmm. He hasn't lost his coaching staff. There was no boobery. No, just like, oh my God. There wasn't anything like that. So, he gets at least a pass from me in the sense that like, well, there was, and we've had the comment a number of times, what a clown car on fire was going on at times, and yet he was never Bozo the Clown out there. And so I will give him credit for that to begin with. Right.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, especially for a team that was, 29-75 at one point, they were bad, but they came by their badness honestly. I don't feel like the manager was making things worse. Right. Which for a team that had a record that bad is a testament in itself. But then the fact that they did finish much stronger than they started, I think, the beginning of the year when the Royals were playing so badly and they had this manager who never seemed to be, angry or, overly emotional. He was accused of being too passive and accused of not having the red ass. Right, as if that's necessarily a bad thing. And certainly he has a very different personality than Mike Matheny. And I think that was part of the appeal of hiring him, that he was much more low stress on his players. Now, you can certainly be too easy and be such a player's manager that you let the inmates run the asylum. And that's what you would have, if that were the case, though, you would have expected things to fall apart in a bad season. And to hear reports, players loafing and players, not trying in the second half. And I think we saw the opposite. I think we saw they played better in the second half. And, I don't feel like his, the advantage of having a low stress personality is that you don't wear out your welcome as quickly. A high stress guy might get immediate results, but they tend to rub the nerves of the players raw over time. I think his personality kept the clubhouse together. And for as much as you and I can see from the outside, I certainly can't ding him for that.
Right. By the way, we're proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, serving the entire Kansas City metro area. I've been making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Full service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Why risk accidents and liability in your parking lot when you don't have to? Let Gann Asphalt and Concrete take care of your parking lot. Get it restriped today. Brightly striped lots will cut down on accidents and keep your parking lot as safe as possible, allowing you to focus on your business. Make sure the first impression you give to your customers, to your clients, is a good one. Call Gann Asphalt and Concrete today at 816-484-3338. Find them online at gannasphalt.com. Rany, you want to lead us off again? What grade did you give for Matt Quatraro?
So, I'm certainly not going to refute any accusations that I am a softie. But I just feel like it would be hard to justify giving Quatraro a worse grade than JJ Picollo, especially since, unlike Picollo, he really was new to the organization, and he's even less responsible for the talent that was on the field than JJ Picollo was. So I'm going to give him a B, but it's really a B/incomplete, because the first year of a rebuild is such a difficult time to evaluate a new manager, because you mentioned bringing a knife to a gunfight. Like, how is he tactically when you have to win a game? I have no idea, because there was no must-win games that he had to manage this past year. So we won't know how good he is at things like bringing in the right reliever with 2 men on and 2 out in a 1-run game in the 8th inning, because it really didn't matter. That wasn't his focus this past year. So there's a lot we cannot evaluate him on, and that's okay. But for now, I'm comfortable giving him a B.
I'm going to go with a B as well. And like you said, incomplete's probably, to be determined is probably a better way to do it, but that's no fun. So let's put a grade down, and then next year we'll look back and be like, well, that was dumb. And that'll be more fun. So I give him a B for a couple reasons. Not losing this clubhouse. I mean, the season was a disaster, right? I thought about giving him like a C- because I'm like, okay, you look at the expected win-loss and all those different things, and it's anywhere from they were supposed to win 62 games, they're supposed to win 64 games. So in some ways, you look at that and you're like, well, the metrics say that he performed lower than what they should. I don't know, when your run differential is this bad, when the pitching was as bad as it was, how much losing by 8 runs in a game, like how do you quantify that when you turn around and then win a 1-run game? I couldn't bring myself to it, because I don't know that he really had the weapons. But I know they dismantled this bullpen in season, never complained, didn't whine, didn't get upset, wasn't fussy in the pre or post game deals, and I think that steady hand helped a young team get through the season, right? And so I don't know. We may get to a time where this team is ready to contend, and you go, he's too soft. Like, you do need somebody to go flip a table and motivate somebody. Maybe, but I don't think if we ask for a numbers guy and you're given a numbers guy, you can't go, well, give me a rah-rah guy, right? Like, this is what we've been asking for, and it's what he delivered. Now, at some point, he's got to deliver on the numbers, which he definitely didn't do this year. That's the inner turmoil I've got. But he dealt with guys coming and going. He dealt with, being handed a roster that I don't think was anything like what he wanted. And I think JJ Picollo pretty much said as much when asked what do they need to do in the offseason. He's like, well, the bullpen. I've got to. I have to get him. And he pointed at Quatraro. I have to give him weapons. And that and weapons with the bat too, right? Give him the ability to mix and match, and so for basically, I think just taking on what was an impossible situation and never getting down, never getting pissy with the media, never creating a situation where for the fans to have animosity, not calling the team out in spring training out to home plate and giving him a speech in front of everybody the way Trey Hillman did. There was no goofiness. He didn't try to reinvent the game. He's a real big league manager. I do believe that. Whether it works here or not, I don't know. But just for going through this year and not allowing it to become, comedic, I think it's worth something. And it shows a level of character and a level of respect.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned their record was worse than we would expect from their run differential, and maybe that's a sign he's not good technically. You know what's interesting? What was the Royals' record in one-run games this year?
When they're right around 500 plus or
They were
minus
21-20.
Yeah.
Now, again, there's a lot of luck always involved with that sort of thing. That's precisely how a 100-loss team. Yeah, the Padres. I mean, 100-loss team with a winning record in one-run games tells you that one-run games is not a marker of quality. There's a lot of luck there, but there's nothing there that would say, oh, he's a bad tactical manager. They won more than their fair share of close games. So that's one thing. And
do you have any go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted.
I would say, tactically, what's interesting. The other thing I'll give him credit for, winning wasn't like winning was the number one priority, but like, did he do things like platoon players? He did. I mean, you would see, against lefties, Edward Olivares would generally be in the lineup. I mean, maybe he took it to the extreme where you had like Matt Duffy playing a lot against lefties, and nobody cared about seeing Matt Duffy this year. But there was at least an acknowledgement that there are ways to use your bench to, if you're going to have a bench and you use those players, use them in situations where they're more likely to succeed. That's an easy thing to do, but he did it. You look at some of the bench players. You look at Freddie Fermin, and the season that he had when no one expected it. Does the manager get some credit for a guy who was considered to be a backup being used, especially when Salvador Perez is the starter, and Salvador can basically catch every day? He spotted Salvador at DH or at first base later in the year in order to get Freddie Fermin in the lineup. He must have used Fermin correctly because Freddie Fermin had a shockingly good offensive season. By the end of the year, one of the best guys on the bench was Dairon Blanco. I mean, Dairon Blanco, a 30-year-old rookie, had finished the year with a 775 OPS, a 111 OPS plus, and 24 steals. In playing 69 games, most of those off the bench. Like he was that's a very useful bench piece. And I thought he used him fairly appropriately. There's given what he had to work with. Again, there's no evidence he's a technical genius, but I certainly see no technical deficiencies there.
Do you have any pet peeves? I've got
pet peeves. I mean,
I'll give you mine to give you an idea of like I'm willing to give him a complete mulligan that it's just because he doesn't have the ammunition. But he stayed with his starters too long, and and it's part of the reason why you and I go round and round about. I know why he stayed with Jordan Lyles, because that's what Lyles was there to do.
Right.
But at some point, guys like him should not be seeing a lineup a third time. They didn't when he was in Milwaukee and he had success. I mean, they managed for that. And again, I don't think the bullpen was great to start the year. Then they traded off anything that they could get anything for. And so I understand why he wanted to go deeper with him, but that has to stop. At some point, he has to show me that he understands, guys that are brought in to be innings eaters should eat about 5 to 6 innings in the modern game and be out. They should not be seeing the 7th or 8th. That's just not going to happen. That's one of the things I'd like to see evolve, but I completely understand if he's like, who the hell else did you want me to send out there? I get that.
Right. If you're going to have a sacrificial lamb out there, you could not do better than Jordan Lyles. That's one area you and I will agree about with Jordan Lyles. That doesn't worry me too much. And one of the reasons why is, early in the season, I was somewhat frustrated with the fact that he was not being more creative with the pitching staff, especially given his background with the Rays and what they've done with pitcher usage, and the fact that he was inheriting a pitching staff that needed every bit of creativity you could come up with. But as the season went along, and especially in September, that started to evolve. The Royals started to really flirt with using the opener a lot. In September, I count 8 starts in September where the Royals had an opener going. Taylor Clark, James MacArthur, I forget this earlier in the month, he started a game. Steven Cruz started a couple of games. Jonathan Bolin started a game. Essentially, by the end of the year, you had Reagan's, Jordan Lyles, of course, we're in the rotation. Greinke was in the rotation, but I think on 3 different occasions they used him as the bulk reliever after an opener. Not entirely sure why, but I think it was because they didn't want him facing the top of the lineup a third time. Like, one of the key advantages of using the opener is that by bringing in your starter, your actual bulk guy, to face the number 5, number 6 hitters, you don't mind if that guy goes 18 batters and then faces the bottom of the lineup a third time. So you can get 22, 23 hitters from that guy without facing their best hitters a third time. They did that a couple times, and then when they shut down Brady Singer, they also had a spot open up for him. So it was like basically 2 turns through each rotation. They're just like, we don't have 5 starters, so we're not going to pretend we do. We're going to use an opener. We're going to use Angel Serpa in kind of a long role, or Alec Marsh. I mean, those were essentially the closest thing the Royals had to a number 4, number 5 starters in September. But both of those guys, I think, were very well served by only having to go through a lineup twice, and only twice. Like 3 innings, maybe even, not even twice through the lineup, 3 to 4 innings tops. I want to see the Royals, frankly, do more of that next year. I think both of those guys, if they're asked to be 6-inning pitchers, are not going to be, they're not going to be good. They're not even going to be mediocre. They're not going to be valuable. I think both Serpa and Marsh in a 3 to 4 inning role can actually be major league assets. I'm very curious to see if that's how they use those guys next year. But what we saw in September, that made me feel better that the Royals, maybe the first couple months was, again, just about getting through the season. And then by the end of the year, it was they were more in evaluation mode. And let's see what these 2 guys can do. But, they were both in the minor leagues to start the season, Serpa and Marsh. So they used them, but you paired them with an opener so that they could minimize their weaknesses. So that part of it, the way he used the pitchers by the end of the year, I'll give him a lot of points for that.
Yeah, no, I agree. We're proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, with free consultations, no commissions, and in-house crews. Plus, every project coming with a written warranty. You can't go wrong with Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Keep your parking lot safer and help avoid unnecessary delays with Gann Asphalt and Concrete. You can find them online at gannasphalt.com. That's gannasphalt.com. You can trust that they've been solving parking lot problems for basically 30 years in Kansas City, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. They're online at gannasphalt.com. All right, let's shift gears. Let's talk about what a contract for Bobby Witt Jr. will look like. How do you want to attack this?
So I have, I'd like to take this tactic from the standpoint of imagine that I am Bobby Witt's agent.
Okay.
What, and knowing that these are the Royals, assuming my client is willing to entertain a contract, a long-term contract at all, and that is not, there's no guarantee that that's the case. But if Bobby Witt informs me, his agent, let's see if the Royals are willing to meet our terms. Let's come up with demands, and let's see if the Royals are willing to meet. If they cough up the money, I'm willing to sign. Let's come up with that contract. What it would look like.
All right. And
are you good with that? Okay. So,
and I'll give a team perspective.
Okay. You want to hear mine, and then you can say that sounds great, or you're full of it. We're not going.
I will rebut
my offer. Okay.
But being the key.
But of course. So the more I looked into trying to come up with a fair, contract based on comparables in the industry to Bobby Witt, the more I came back to the Julio Rodriguez contract.
Okay.
both because if the player was a similar player. Obviously, they were rookies together. Julio had a better rookie season than Bobby Witt. That he signed it. The biggest difference, he signed his contract at the end of his rookie year when he only had 1 year of service time, and Bobby has 2. So that is a big difference. But that part of it, and the fact that Julio Rodriguez's agent is Octagon Agency, and conveniently they represent Bobby Witt. So I don't think that this is a much of a stretch. But the parameters of Julio's contract are really interesting because he essentially has the guaranteed portion, which was a 7-year contract where the terms are known to everybody. He signed a 7-year deal that guaranteed him $119 million. It was somewhat front-loaded. He got a $15 million signing bonus. Ultimately, it came out to be roughly the same amount of money every year, so it wasn't backloaded at all. At the end of that 7 years, though, what made this contract fascinating is there was a team option first, and then if the team declined that option, there was a player option second. And what that basically means is if Julio Rodriguez is as good as, everybody thinks that the Mariners thought he would be, they can keep him for 8 more years. They're going to have to pay a lot of money to do so. And the money that they do so escalates based on how well he does in MVP voting over the first 7 years of that deal. But if he's terrible or is injured or, the worst case scenario, and they decline their option, he has a player option that guarantees him $90 million more for 5 years. So what this does basically is it gave him guaranteed security in the sense that no matter what, even if he had a career-ending injury, that $119 million that he's getting guaranteed, plus his 5-year $90 million player option, guarantees him basically $210 million no matter what. That's his lifetime security right there. But if he's as good as he thinks he's going to be, yes, the Mariners can keep him, but they're going to have to pay him $200 million on top of the $119. So $320 million is his guarantee if he's actually good over 15 years. And if he had multiple top 5 MVP finishes or wins an MVP, he's basically guaranteed another $80 million more in that team option. So the Mariners can keep him, but he could make as much. I believe the maximum he could make, if he won multiple MVPs, he could actually make $340 million over, was it 70?
Well, I think it's 400 is the max.
Yeah, no, sorry, 350. So actually, if he wins an MVP, the club option is 8 and 240, which means the total is 15 and 360. But if he wins 2 MVPs in the first 7 years, which that's if he's Mike Trout basically, then the club option is 10 years for 35 million a year, 350. So the total is 17 years, $470 million. So I mean, think about it. If he turns into Mike Trout, well, $470 million is about what Mike Trout makes. So like it's actually a very smart way to give security to the player, give the team club control if they want it, but if they do and he's good, he's going to get paid very close to market value. So, it makes sense for both sides. It ultimately makes sense for both sides. And I really like using that as a base. However, I don't think you're going to get Bobby Witt for the Julio Rodriguez contract. If I'm his agent, I'm not, both because it's been another year and every year the contract should go up. And very crucially, because he's 1 year closer to free agency and you're not buying out 5 years, you're only buying out 4 years. So everything you're only buying out 4 years. So everything after that is, you have to pay close to market value for. In terms of the quality of the players, it's pretty comparable. You could, like, if you ask 100 people in baseball, who would you rather have, Julio Rodriguez or Bobby Witt? I don't think it would be more than 60-40 in either direction, honestly. So let's just that part is actually the easy part. That in terms of their talent, they play different positions, but they're both extremely talented, extremely young players.
Who do you think has a higher upside?
How old is Julio right now? Because I mean, Witt has the positional value that Julio will never have, right? If he can stay at shortstop, that you're going to have that extra value. But I mean, Julio is 6 months younger than him, even though, well, they were. I mean, at this point, they were rookies the same year, so I guess I would say Bobby just because, again, the positional value. But keep in mind, Julio has been the better player each of the last 2 years. This past year, it's very close based on wins and rough replacement. And that is based on Baseball Reference's evaluation of Witt's defense, which is below average, close to average. But by StatCast, he's a Gold Glove contender. So I think you can make the case that Witt had the better year. So I would say just because he is a shortstop, Witt probably has the higher upside, but it is very close.
Who is going to age better?
They're really close because they both have power and speed, which, the speed, Witt is, a little bit faster, but I mean, it's, microscopically a difference, I think. I don't, the fact that he stayed, they both been very healthy too. Like neither one of them has had a significant injury. It's close. That's why I'm saying this feels very even, and so it's easy to compare them as players.
6'3", 228 pounds is Julio Rodriguez. Bobby Witt, 6'1", 200. At 32, 33 years old, who will muscle the ball over the wall?
I mean, you could argue Julio's the bigger guy. He's going to have more power, but I also think Witt is. But he might also lose defensive value quickly. Like, you want a 6'3", 228? Is he still going to be patrolling center field when he's 32? Probably not. Whereas 6'1", 200, if he's not he might still be a shortstop. Bobby Witt, if he can, play the position now, he might be able to play in 10 years. If not, he can certainly play third or second.
I think Julio Rodriguez, his power. I think if you gave me a choice to trade Bobby Witt for Julio Rodriguez, would I do it right now? Yes. I think Julio Rodriguez.
Well, based on he has the contract, yes, I would do it too. But yes, I know what you're saying. Like, but as players, if I'm Bobby Witt's agent, I'm saying, look, my guy, yeah, he's not as big, but that's actually a good thing. I mean, Mookie Betts is like 5'9". Is that a problem for him aging? Like, actually, the big guys sometimes
he hasn't gotten old yet. Would be my answer. And I think it will be. I think it will be. Like, I think you've got a better chance to play at a high level into your mid-30s. And the steroid era is gone. And so no one's going to play well at age 38, 39, 40 anymore. But I just, for me, I think you're more likely to get high-end offensive numbers. And I think they'll both deteriorate defensively over time. The speed will be zapped. And then it's just going to be about who can really hit the ball over the wall. And I think that's more likely to be Rodriguez.
I would argue. I mean, I would argue there's really no evidence that being bigger means that you're going to age better. I mean, Jose Altuve is 5'5". He's 33 this year, and when he was actually in the lineup, he had one of his best seasons. Whereas I know, at extreme high levels, Joe Sheehan has written about this a lot. Batters who are, I think, 6'6" or taller, it's either 6'6" or 6'7", which again, that's extreme high. After age 30, they fall off a cliff. Like he wrote about this with respect to Aaron Judge, who might keep in mind was out a lot this year. There's a certain height at which your body probably just breaks down faster because you're so physically big. Ultimately, I don't know that. I mean, these guys are both in the mid range, 6'1" and 200, and 6'3" and 228. Neither of these guys has an extreme body type. But I could certainly make the case that Bobby Witt, being a little bit less bulky, is more likely to age better. But, it's close. Ultimately, I think this is as close a comp as we're going to find in baseball, both in terms of age, service time, and quality. So, but we're going to have to up the numbers because he's my client and he's closer to free agency. If Witt goes year to year, I think David Lesky wrote about this maybe a week or two ago. He estimated that Bobby Witt would make something over the next 4 years, somewhere in the range of 38 million over 4 years. I think that might be a bit of an undersell, honestly, because again, arbitration numbers go up every year. I'm putting him at 4 years and 45 million is what he would make in arbitration over the next 4 years if he continues to play at a high level. And just this contract that Julio Rodriguez signed bought out the 7-year guarantee, bought out 2 years of free agency. So let's assume a 6-year contract for Bobby Witt. that also buys out 2 years of free agency. What's the free agent value, Bobby Witt? At least $35 million, right?
Okay.
A year. So let's call it between 35 and 40 million a year. Because those are prime years. He's gonna be 28 and 29 years old, I believe, in those years. So you add those numbers up, that's 120 million over 6 years. So I'm expecting 6 years, $120 million for my client. And because I'm a generous agent, I'll even allow the Royals to front load the deal because I know they can afford it right now because their payroll is so low. So what I would actually do that I think would make sense for both sides is you front load it and you back load it. So Bobby Witt gets $30 million next year. Maybe it's someone that's in a signing. He gets $25 million as a signing bonus and $5 million as a salary, whatever. He gets $30 million in compensation next year. That goes down to $20 million in year 2, $10 million in years 3 and year 4. So that's a prime opportunity for the Royals to add payroll when when this team has been through the rebuilding project and is ready to contend. They're going to have ample payroll in 2026 and 2027. And then it goes back up to $25 million in 2028 and in 2029. So 6 years, 120 guaranteed. And then I'm going to give the team the option at that point, 8 years, $240 million. The Royals can pick that up. But just like Julio Rodriguez had all these escalators based on MVP voting, my client, if he finishes in the top 5 multiple times or wins an MVP award in the next 6 years, that's an extra $40 to $80 million on that contract. So it could easily be up to 8 and 320. $40 million a year starting at age 30. This contract will run through from age 30 to age 37. So if my client is, a good but not great player for the next 6 years, I'm getting $360 million over 14 years, which is just a hair over $25 million a year. The Royals can absolutely afford that. If he is a perennial MVP candidate for the next 6 years, then we're talking about $560 million. Sorry, $440 million over 14 years, so about $31 million a year. And if he wins multiple MVP awards, so this is the same clause Julio Rodriguez has, that 8 and 320 goes to 10 and 400 as an option. So the Royals can keep him, but then it's 16 years, $520 million, which is a higher guarantee than a certain Patrick Mahomes has on the other side of the Truman Sports Complex. Bobby Witt is supposed to be the Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Royals. If he wins multiple MVP awards in the next 6 years, he will be compensated the same way.
How's the no trade clause work?
So the no trade clause, I mean, everything is negotiable. But generally speaking, for the first 6 years, there would probably be a blanket no trade clause. At that point, then he can be, he can like list 6 teams that he cannot be traded to. Yeah, you can trade him to most teams, but not all. Everything's negotiable though. But yeah, for the first 6 years, he can't be traded without his consent. And then if the team does not pick up the option, so he's not played well or he's injured or whatever, then he has a 5-year, $100 million player option, which basically means he's guaranteed $220 million the minute he puts pen to paper. But if if he is good, if he's elite, he's committed to the Royals for the rest of his career, but he's also guaranteed close to $500 million in his contract.
Okay, a couple of things. One, just for fun, I searched 40 home run seasons, age 32 to 36 over the last 15 years. Stay away from the steroid era. This is why I will tell you your client's not worth as much as Rodriguez. Those players are Nelson Cruz, 6'2", 230, Edwin Encarnacion, 6'1", 230, Adam Dunn, 6'6", 285, Jose Bautista, 6 foot 205, Marcell Ozuna, 6'1", 225, and Albert Pujols, 6'3", 235. I don't think you guys are going to be banging it over the wall in his mid-30s. I think a lot of his value is tied to his speed, and to the position that he plays. Marvelous player, love it. And by the way, Nelson Cruz has done it 3 times in that stretch. But it tends to be a bigger man's game when we're talking about home runs. If he was a pure home run hitter, I would feel a little bit better and a little bit higher contact, a little bit higher on base percentage. But I understand the value. Number one, no trade clause, not giving it. We set the parameters here that we don't give that as an organization. We're not going to give it here. We're going to have to turn and burn almost everybody we have anyway. And so not being locked into a long-term contract, which has crippled many a small market franchise. You and I have talked about that before. I've gone through how the record went down after signing Joey Votto, Todd Helton, all these different big contracts that were signed by smaller or mid-market teams. They end up crippling what the team can do. I think, if he's not winning MVPs, that's the better situation for the Royals to be in, right? I'd hate to be in a contract where I'm rooting for it. I think this is the kind of contract that Bobby Witt Jr. is going to come asking for. Maybe. I do love the parameter. I do love the framework of it because it's the same agency, but he's an American son of a big leaguer. I think he's going for the maximum dollars. I personally know that's not my role here. You're offering me this. My response would be, I don't think he's going to be the better player over the long haul over Rodriguez, but I understand that we're a year further into it. So I would basically say, I'll give you the Rodriguez deal plus 5% across the board. You get to go tell your client you won, you championed it, but I give you 5% so that we can get it done. Right. But I'm not inclined in resetting it, and I will not give a no trade clause, because if things go south, we have to be able to flip the player. We're going to be transactional. It starts right now. No trade clause, 5% increase off what Rodriguez got across the board. Where would you go?
Well, I mean, I where I personally would go is I
go deal.
Huh? I mean, I'm like, hey, I'm the agent. I'm getting 5%. Yes, deal. You got it. But I mean, what I'm asking for is basically what the Rodriguez deal plus 10%. And frankly, even that, I'm not sure Bobby. Like, this is all predicated on the idea that Bobby Witt is willing to make to sign this contract. I worry that being a Royals fan is making me think that that this is reasonable. But that, like you said, if Bobby Witt wants to go to free agency and make the absolute most amount of money, then there, all of this is an academic point that nothing we say here is going to matter. If he wants to sign, then he has to know that he will not make as much as he theoretically would make if he has, 4 excellent years and, is an MVP candidate in 2027, I guess, and hits free agency at 27 and a half years old. If I'm at Julio Rodriguez plus 10%, you're at Julio Rodriguez plus 5%, I don't think that 5% is going to scuttle the deal. I think that the two sides can reach an agreement. I will say this: you said you rattled off the names of guys with 40 home run seasons in their mid 30s. Is the goal here to hit home runs, or is the goal here to win games? Because like one of the guys you mentioned was Adam Dunn, who yes, he had 41 home runs at age 32. He hit 204 that year and had struck out 222 times. Like you're biasing it against pure power hitters. Bobby Witt's value is that he doesn't have to hit 40 home runs. He didn't hit 40 home runs this year and to be a valuable player. If you look at players who had 7-win seasons, 7 wins above replacement between ages 32 and 36 in the last 15 years, there's 5 guys: Joey Votto, Paul Goldschmidt, Marcus Semien, Robinson Cano, and Adrian Beltre. Votto is 6'2" and 220. Goldschmidt 6'3" and 220. Semien 6 foot even and 195. Cano is 6 foot even and 228. And Adrian Beltre is 5'11" and 220. So height-wise, Witt's in the middle. Weight-wise, keep in mind, Witt will probably gain 10 to 15 pounds over the next decade, right? So that's their weight at the end of their careers. So I think in terms of value, I don't think that the size matters much. I just think it's a matter of he's going to want more money than Julio Rodriguez.
Let me give you another reason why I don't think that kind of contract is going to work. One, most importantly, that he is an American.
That is, of course, American, and more precisely, he's already made millions, and he comes from a family with millions, and he doesn't have to worry about worst case scenario as much as somebody like Julio Rodriguez did.
let's insert George Brett into that contract, right? And it's by age. Basically, it's through the first how many based on MVP votes 22 to 28. So that is 22 to that's ages 21 to 27.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if Bobby Witt Jr. has the career that George Brett had, how many times would he qualify? How many top 10 MVP votes?
Well, obviously, he won the MVP at age 27.
I can give you the answer. It's 3.
3. I'm going to say, I mean, he's good. 79, I know, was a great year. And then I guess, 76 when he won his first batting title. So, okay, well, by this category, he didn't win 2 MVPs, but he would have got the 10-year.
He would have got the 2 top 10 votes. So 8 years, 240 million.
Yeah. So the Julio Rodriguez deal is if you win MVP and you have one other top 5 finish, then you get basically 80 million more. So it would be 8 years and 320.
You're right.
Million.
Yeah.
So it's basically comes out to 14 years or 16 years and $440 million in guaranteed, if you pick up the option, and that takes him through his age 37 season. So he may still have something left in the tank, but he's getting 440 million.
Do you how many times do you think Bobby Witt Jr. is going to finish top 10 in MVP playing for the Kansas City Royals?
Top 10? I mean, I think he's going to finish top 10 this year. I actually think he's probably going to finish like 9th or 8th or 9th this year. I mean, if in the next 4 years, that's all we're guaranteed to have him. I will say he'll finish in the top 10 at least one more time.
Yeah.
And,
so I mean, I do think, and I think that's kind of the structure here to where his people are going to balk.
You think that they'll want those bonuses? Like it needs to be easier to obtain them, or
I think they'll take less like pie in the sky. He's a superstar money, at the end, and do away with the floor. I want right here. And I believe that he is going to want to be a free agent long before he's 30. Like I think there's a chance that the Royals go to him and there is nothing they can do to sign him.
That is my thinking more. Like if he's willing to do a contract, this is probably the kind of contract where he's going to get, a guarantee that starts with the number 3, if not 4, as long as he's decent, right? As long as the Royals pick up that option, or he's a free agent at 30, or in a worst case scenario, when he gets hurt, he still gets 200 plus, right? But I'm not convinced he's willing to sign that at all. I know some people think that he might sign a contract this winter. I actually think the odds that the Royals can get him to sign any contract is less than 50-50.
How many, if you're the Royals, how many years of free agency do you have to get from him?
I mean, so much of it depends on what are you giving in return? And by that, I mean, if he's like, I absolutely will not sign a long-term deal with the franchise, but I will sign a 5-year contract right now. No option after that. Like there's no player option. There's no, just straight 5 years. You can buy out 1 year of free agency, and I hit free agency at 28 instead of 27. And in return, I'm getting 100 million now. So like all I'm doing is giving up 1 year of free agency, and in return, I'm getting set for life. But it's 5 years and 75 million or whatever it would be for the Royals, and it's that or nothing. I'd probably still do that if I were the Royals. I'd even if it's just 1 year, I'd do it. But my concern is if it's like I want a 10-year, $300 million deal, but I get a opt out at the 5-year mark. So basically, you're buying out 1 year of free agency, but in return, if some things go sideways or he gets hurt, he has a 5-year. You're signing him to a 5-year deal with a 5-year player option. Like I think I've mentioned this before. I absolutely hate just from a club standpoint and just from a logical standpoint, the opt out in that Scott Boras has used to very good effect because he's a very good free agent, a very good agent for his players, because it's such a player friendly provision. Because the team takes on so much risk for so little upside, right? So 5 years, but no downside, and I get 1 year of free agency, great. But if I'm giving you a 5-year player option, so if things go bad, it's heads you win, tails I lose, right? If you're good, you're leaving. But if you're not good, then I'm stuck with you. Like that makes no sense to me. But as long as there's no downside, any year I can take, because at this point, even that 1 year, it 1 year is better than none, but also it also extends the window at which you can consider trading him for a boatload of prospects or whatever another year. So you don't have the urgency to make that decision in the next year or two. Can we win with this guy, or do we need to cash in our chips now and rebuild with him?
I think the other thing that makes it difficult to get him to agree is one, he's going to be a free agent at 27. That is a premium. I mean, the money and everybody else is signing. So that makes him like the only guy that's going to hit the market. Rodriguez is signed. Wander Franco, whatever's going to go on with him, is signed. All these, so if he's the only guy that's going to hit the market, it's going to be.
Adley Rutschman might be the other guy who will be a free agent at that point. But of course, that assumes that he doesn't sign a long-term deal between now and then. So absolutely, I mean, a 27-year-old who plays a key premium position with speed and power, that's a rare commodity. I mean, we mentioned Trey Turner as sort of being comparable to that when he was a free agent last year, but Trey Turner was 29 when he hit free agency, and there's a huge difference between 27 and 29.
Yeah,
and that I think is ultimately, if there's a if I'm Bobby Witt and I'm decided I'm not signing no matter what, that's the reason why. Like, I know that I can be a truly special free agent talent in 4 years.
All right, let's wrap with this. He does or doesn't sign with the Royals when it's all said and done.
This is such a hard prediction because it has nothing to do with baseball knowledge. This is purely, do I know Bobby Witt Jr. personally? And the answer is no, I do not. So I can't tell you what his motivations are. But reading the tea leaves of comments made on both sides, I feel like if I had to answer, I would say no, he is not.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am.
I think the Royals, they're saying all the right things. They want to sign him. I don't sense a ton of optimism on their side that they can get something done, even if they are supremely motivated to do so. This is one of the reasons why I broached the subject of trading him this summer. Not that I think the Royals will, or even that they need to right this moment. I don't. His trade value will decline, but I think you look at the Juan Soto trade that we talked about. That was 2.5 years, 3 pennant races that you were trading away. The Royals are 18 months away from that. That's the point at which, if you don't move him, the value on market starts dropping precipitously. But I feel like it's something we need to discuss now, because I just feel like the Royals may be at that decision point in 18 months. If they can get him signed and we can avoid that discussion, that is the best case scenario. Absolutely. I will believe it when I see it.
I think back to the comments of J.J. Picola a couple of weeks ago when he was doing the final press conference, and he was asked about that, and he said, well, we're going to try. We're going to try our best. He didn't say it's our top priority. There was no assumption of success there, just we're going to try. That, to me, speaks to what the state of mind is there, that this is an uphill battle.
Right. That they want to, but they know that that want has only something to do with it. There's only so much you can get with wanting to do something, and they can't make a guarantee of something that they don't, they're not ultimately calling the shots on.
Yeah. Listen, the only kind of guarantees you can get is going with a great company like Gann Asphalt and Concrete. How about that for a segue? Why risk accidents and liability in your parking lot if you own your business, if you are a property manager? Gann Asphalt and Concrete's been making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Anything you need done with your parking lot, think Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. That's GannAsphalt.com, or call 816-484-3338. For the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, my name is Soren Petro, saying thank you very much for joining us.